right, I've got us on page 67, chapter 12 of 2 Corinthians. Again, thank you for those that filled in for me last week. All right, number 1 says, this chapter speaks of Paul's blank and blank of the Lord. This chapter speaks of Paul's what? Visions and revelations of the Lord, okay? You see that in verse 1 there. Okay, number 2 says, Paul could not tell whether the person caught up to the blank blank was in the body or out of the body. And one translation says with a body or without a body.
I think that's strange.
Okay, the answer is they're caught up to the third heaven, okay? Always found that to be a very strange reading there, the vision that he was discussing here, talking about. I think we understand maybe why it was given and why Paul was aware of that or knew about that, but understanding exactly what all he meant from those verses is a little bit difficult to understand. But we do know for sure in verse 3 that God knows, because it says, God knows. Number 3, this person is also said to have been caught up into Paradise. Yes, that's found in verse 4 as well. Okay, number 4, what was unusual about what was heard by the person caught up?
Unspeakable words not lawful for a man to utter.
Okay.
So does that mean if you get a glimpse of heaven, you can't come back and tell them about it?
That's a good question. It says it's not lawful for a man to utter. In other words, we've all had those secrets, right? And that we're supposed to keep to ourselves. But this kind of sounds like what that's talking about. Unspeakable words and other things.
Doesn't it also say something about inexpressible or something that you couldn't explain it even if you wanted to?
It doesn't say that here, or at least in this translation, but it does. What does he says? Yeah, what is
Inexpressible.
Inexpressible. In other words, can't be explained, and that makes a little better sense to me than unspeakable.
So
words.
do you think who do you think this person was?
Who do I think this person was?
Yeah.
You're going to answer one of our true and false questions here in a little bit.
Well, I kind of thought it would be worth.
A discussion? Yes. I don't know. Do you think that we're told who it is?
No, but most everybody that I listen to
On this subject, yes.
They think it's Paul himself.
Yes. I think that it is too, but the way he explains it, it tends to lead you in a direction that it's not, but I don't know why he wouldn't have just come out and said it there. But it does tend to, I tend to believe that's the case. At least he was shown that in a vision, but again, it's not for, I cannot tell, as it says there at the end of verse 3, from what I have here in this information. All right, number 5. What does Paul call the thorn in the flesh?
Messenger of Satan.
The messenger of Satan. And we've all heard talk about that. Paul's thorn in the flesh. What is Paul's thorn in the flesh? Everybody wants to think about what that might be. And here we'll talk a little bit more about it, but I like the way he refers to it as a messenger of Satan, and we'll find out why he says that. Why was the thorn given Paul?
He's to be exalted above measure.
Okay. So it says it's given to him to buffet him. What does that word mean? We read that word in other places. That he has to buffet his body on a daily basis. When you read that word, what do you think about? I can think about bringing into subjection or something like that, but when you hear that word, what do you... I'm sorry?
Humbling yourself.
Humbling yourself, yes. Humbling yourself. Thinking about that. And he says that this thorn was given to me because, as a messenger of Satan, in other words, to keep me in line, if you will. So why would he been one that would have been exalted above measure? Why do you think Paul would have been exalted above measure had he not have been humbled as he was? Well, Paul had went a lot of places. He had been seen by a lot of people, hadn't he?
Yeah.
And he had had a lot of influence.
Worshiping.
And he had healed a lot of people. So it would have been easy for him to have been elevated into a position of what they would like to say, earthly powers, and made a bishop out of him, or whatever they might have called him in that time. And that would have been easy for that to have happened because of his position, his timing, and the places that he was going, and the church being established as it was. So this was given him, he says here, as a messenger of Satan to buffet me, so that would not happen. He would keep himself in check, if you will. Number 7, Paul asked the Lord blank times for relief from the thorn. 3 times, thrice. And number 8, why did the Lord not remove it?
Because His grace was sufficient. What else?
Yes, he said his grace was sufficient for Paul, and his strength is made perfect in weakness. We sing a song talking about, I am weak, but thou art strong. Here I think that was shown through Paul, that this man, that Paul chose him, that they chose Paul. He wasn't an eloquent speaker. We read in other places how that he said, I wasn't eloquent in speech. All of these things, but he chose him. We read also of God's messenger in another place, Jesus Christ himself, and we read from Isaiah in 53 that he's what? He's not a man he's not a handsome man. He's not fond to look on. Why did God choose these people and not somebody very, that would have drawn attention to themselves without having the message that they had? Because of that, because they were humble, because the true message was that of humbleness, yes. Number 9, why would Paul gladly glory in his infirmities? Yes, that the power of Christ may rest upon him. Again, God's strength being shown through the weaknesses of Paul, and that power of Christ being shown through his abilities to do those things. All right, number 10. Did Paul apply the scripture, my grace is sufficient for thee, to becoming a Christian? Let me hear your answer, and then we need to explain it.
I had a big old blank that said ask Andy.
I said, wait and see what they say.
Hers says wait and see what they say. Yours is blank. All right, who wrote something down?
I say no.
She says no. Okay.
You're applying it to living as a Christian.
Yes. Okay. He's applying it as living as a Christian, but not becoming a Christian. Okay. Is that part of the Christian's life? Yes, most certainly. We wouldn't have our hope without his grace. We would be most hopeless if we had to depend upon our own works. But yeah, I was waiting for you, Donald. I had asked Donald here. But I believe that is the correct answer. That would have been my answer if I had a written one. It would have definitely been no. 11. The blank of an apostles were wrought among the Corinthians in all patience, in signs and wonders and blank deeds. The signs of an apostles were wrought among the Corinthians, and in all patience, in signs and wonders and mighty deeds. Mighty deeds, yes. All of these things had been shown to them. We'll find out why a little bit later. I think we already understand that. Number 12. Of what wrong did Paul ask the Corinthians to forgive him?
That he was not burdensome to the church.
What do you think about that? Did you have something else?
No, I had that. I had not
Okay.
burdensome, but why does he have to ask?
What do you think? Why do you think that? I have a theory on that, but I want to hear what you think about it.
I think they were responsible for, don't muzzle the ox that treads the corn, they did it.
Yes.
They were responsible for supporting,
Right.
but he stopped them.
Yes. And why do you think that he did that? Why do you think he didn't take, it wasn't that they were not able, right? But there was, if we recall back just a couple of weeks now, we've been talking about these churches of Macedonia, how that they pitched in for Paul's work, and how that they were the one that gave him the support to do these journeys that he had done, and how their generosity had shown through here, so he didn't have to be burdensome to them. But here he is apologizing for that. I agree with you, Donald. I don't understand why he would have to apologize for that, but maybe it was to the point that they didn't appreciate it like they ought to, because they had not had to support him, and they didn't accept it and appreciate it the way they should, because they had not put effort into it themselves financially.
They were taking it for granted.
Exactly, almost as if they were taking for granted what Paul was offering to them, what he had given them. The same thing happened when Titus was there, and we'll find out a little more about that earlier, that that was not the case. But I agree. Why he would offer himself or ask forgiveness for that is, I think, simply that they did not take it as they should have, maybe as seriously as they should have. 13. In stating his plans to come a third time to visit Corinth, Paul said, I seek not blank, but blank.
Yours, but you.
Yes. Okay, I seek not yours, but you. Same thing. What's he talking about? He's talking about he doesn't want the benefits that they could give him. He wants them to be saved. That's what he is coming for. Number 14, what would Paul gladly do for the Corinthian brethren?
Spend and be spent for their souls.
Yes. He would spend and be spent for their souls. What exactly is that meant? What is meant by that exactly?
He would do whatever it takes.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. I think he would do whatever it would have taken. He says there at the end of that, though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved. In other words, he has to pay for that. It costs him sometimes to do that. All right, number 15. In what was the church at Corinth inferior to the other churches? Did you find anything other than what we've been talking about?
You were inferior to the church yourself, and I myself was not burdensome to you.
Yes, that's the only thing. Yes, that's the only thing that I could find is the inferiority of the church there, that was only that Paul was not burdensome to them. That's all right. Number 16, because Paul was blank, he caught the Corinthians with blank. Because Paul was crafty, he caught the Corinthians with cunning or guile. Yes. Okay. found in verse 16 there. Number 17, Paul referred to his association with blank and another brother at Corinth as an example of how Christians ought to conduct themselves. Titus. Yes. All right. Number 18. What did Paul fear he might find at Corinth?
He wouldn't find them as he wished.
That he would not find him as he wished to? What did he say?
Contentions,
Yes.
jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, backbitings, whisperings, conceits, tumults.
Yes, all those things found there in verse 20 was what he was talking about. When he comes again, he would be afraid he would find those things. Yes, and of course not as he would have them be. Okay, number 19. Paul feared that he might bewail many who had sinned and not repented of their blank, blank, and blank. Not repented of their uncleanness, fornication, and lasciviousness. Number 20. In the church today, are we more likely to witness some of the sins in verse 20 or in verse 21? We're more likely to have those tumults and envyings and wraths and strifes, right? A little bit of backbiting and things going on. More so, I think, verse 20 in that than verse 21. All right, true or false? Though the Corinthians were Christians, there were such sins as tumults, strifes, and fornications among them. Obviously, he mentions that. I think so, yes, it's true.
But were they Christians?
We hope so. All right. Number 2, it appears that Paul was the one caught up into the third heaven. What? Who said true? Where'd that come from? Back there? Don said true. All right.
I said true also.
You said true also.
Yeah, but not that I have concrete evidence there. There's none.
This chapter doesn't offer that as evidence for sure. I put false, but I believe that it very well could be. So
I would have put false before listening to what Don said. Now I don't even know.
just the way he refers to him there, talking about I knew such a man, but still.
But he didn't say I am such a man.
Right, he didn't. But it seems, like he's saying things about him. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I don't go any further on that. But number 3, the third time Paul asked the Lord to remove the thorn, his request was granted. False, okay. Number 4, Paul said he took pleasure in such things as infirmities, reproaches, necessities, persecutions, and distresses for Christ's sake. That is true. He said that, yes. Number 5, the Apostle Paul hoped someday to be able to catch up with the very chiefest apostles. He was already there, wasn't he? That's false. Number 6, the Corinthians fully supported Paul while he preached at Corinth. It's false. Number 7, the church at Corinth was praised for being a church without guile. Crafty Paul, he found them with guile, so that's false. Paul regretted the differences he and Titus had while they were at Corinth. That's false. They didn't didn't have differences there, did they? In this chapter, Eve is mentioned for her gracefulness and perfection. Did you find Eve in this chapter?
The last chapter.
No.
She was mentioned in the last chapter, yes. Did you just need to fill one in there or something? Or what? You really made me dig. Number 10, a messenger of Satan punished Paul for the wrongs he had committed. False. The messenger of Satan was his thorn in the flesh, to keep him in line, if you will, but it was not for the wrongs that he had done. Thank you very much. That was an interesting chapter there. We're almost finished here. So we'll figure out in the next week or so where we're going after this. Next week we will have, no we won't. Next week's chapter 13, isn't it? I thought we might do a test. Okay, then we're doing 1 over 5 chapters or something. Whew, we're almost finished, aren't we? All right, thank you very much.